When we think of ancient Egypt, our minds often conjure images of towering pyramids and mysterious tombs filled with gold. These are the eternal homes built for the afterlife. But what about the homes for the living, especially for the most powerful person in the land, the pharaoh? The palaces of the pharaohs were more than just grand houses. They were the very heart of the Egyptian empire, centers of government, religion, and immense wealth. From these magnificent structures, the pharaoh ruled as a living god. His presence felt across the entire kingdom. The palace was a reflection of his divine status, a place where the earthly and the heavenly met, and where the destiny of a great civilization was shaped day by day. These royal residences were designed to impress and to intimidate. They were sprawling complexes of halls, private chambers, gardens, and administrative offices. Every column, every painted wall, and every carefully tended garden was a statement of the pharaoh's absolute authority and control. When foreign ambassadors or local governors entered the palace grounds, they were meant to be overwhelmed by its scale and beauty. This was not just a home, it was a stage for the theater of power. Here the pharaoh would hold court, receive tribute, and perform sacred rituals that maintained cosmic order. The palace was the engine of the state, a bustling hub of activity that kept the empire running smoothly. Unlike the pyramids and temples built from stone to last for eternity, the palaces were constructed primarily from mud brick. The ancient Egyptians believed that life on earth was temporary, a brief prelude to the eternal afterlife. Therefore, their homes, even the pharaohs, were built from materials of the earth, designed to be magnificent for a lifetime, but not forever. This is why so few of them remain today. Their sun-dried brick walls have crumbled back into the desert sands over millennia, leaving behind only faint traces of their former glory. It takes the careful work of archaeologists to piece together the story of these lost architectural wonders. Understanding these lost palaces is crucial to understanding ancient Egypt itself. They offer a unique window into the daily life of the pharaoh, the workings of the royal court, and the intricate connection between power and religion. These were not silent monuments, but vibrant living spaces filled with courtiers, scribes, priests, and servants. They were places of grand ceremonies and secret whispers, a political strategy, and personal moments. By exploring the foundations and fragments that remain, we can begin to reconstruct the majestic world of the pharaohs and appreciate the true scale of their power and influence on the world they built around them. Long before the first pyramid pierced the Egyptian sky, the rulers of the Nile Valley lived in much simpler dwellings. In the time before Egypt was unified, around 3000 BCE, local chieftains governed small territories from compounds made of mud brick and wood. These early royal homes were not the sprawling palaces we might imagine. Instead, they were fortified enclosures, designed for protection as much as for comfort. They were often surrounded by a thick wall, with living quarters, storage areas, and workshops inside. These structures were the seeds from which the great pharaonic palaces would eventually grow, representing the first attempts to create a central point of authority in a fragmented land. The design of these early residences often included a distinctive architectural feature known as the palace facade motif. This was a pattern of recessed paneling that decorated the outer walls, mimicking the look of woven reed mats that were used in even earlier buildings. This design became a powerful symbol of royalty, so much so that it was later carved onto the stone sarcophagi of kings and appeared in their tombs. It was a visual link to the very origins of kingship, a reminder of the ruler's ancestral right to power. Even in these early days, the home of the ruler was more than just a shelter. It was a statement of status and legitimacy. Archaeological discoveries at sites like Hierakonpolis and Abydos have given us a glimpse into these pre-dynastic royal centers. At Hierakonpolis, a large ceremonial complex has been unearthed, which included what may be one of the earliest royal residences. It featured large wooden posts and evidence of painted plaster walls, suggesting a level of decoration beyond a simple mud hut. These findings show that even at this early stage, rulers were using architecture to distinguish themselves from ordinary people. The size of the compound and the resources required to build it would have been a clear display of the chieftain's wealth and ability to command a large workforce. As these local rulers grew more powerful, Their homes grew with them. The compounds became larger and more complex, with more specialized areas for administration and religious activities. This evolution reflected the changing nature of Egyptian society. As it moved towards unification under a single king, the simple mud brick enclosure was transforming into a true administrative center, the forerunner of the grand palaces of the dynastic age. These humble beginnings laid the foundation, both literally and figuratively, for the architectural marvels that would come to define the power and majesty of the pharaohs for the next 3,000 years. With the unification of Egypt and the dawn of the Old Kingdom, around 2686 BCE, the role of the pharaoh was transformed. He was now the absolute ruler of a powerful state, a god on earth. His palace had to reflect this new, elevated status. The capital city of Memphis, located near modern-day Cairo, became the center of this new kingdom. It was here, in the shadow of the great pyramids of Giza and Saqqara, that the pharaohs of the Old Kingdom built their royal residences. The palaces were the administrative heart of the nation, from which the massive projects of pyramid construction and the governance of the entire Nile Valley were managed. The palaces of this era were sprawling, self-contained cities within the city. They were known as Pharaoh, which means great house. This term eventually came to refer to the king himself, which is where we get the word pharaoh. The palace complex would have included media group, reconstruction of Pharaoh's private quarters, remains of royal residence rooms, palace interior ruins, stocked distribute equally, the king's private living quarters, grand halls for receiving guests, offices for the vizier and other high officials, workshops for craftsmen, and vast storerooms for grain and other goods. It was a hive of activity, the true economic and political engine of the state. The pharaoh's presence was the central point around which the entire administration of the kingdom revolved, making his home the most important building in the land. Architecturally, these Old Kingdom palaces continued to use mud brick as their primary building material, though stone was now used for important elements like doorways, columns, and flooring. The palace facade decoration, that symbolic paneling from earlier times, was still used, connecting the current pharaoh to his ancestral past. The layout was becoming more formal and structured, with a clear separation between public, administrative areas and the private, residential quarters of the royal family. This division helped to create an aura of mystery and sanctity around the king. Only the most trusted individuals would ever be granted access to the inner sanctum of the palace. Life within the Old Kingdom palace was governed by strict protocol and ceremony. Every action from the pharaoh's morning ritual of dressing to the grand feasts held in the audience hall was imbued with religious and political significance. Scribes bustled through the corridors with papyrus scrolls, recording taxes and issuing royal decrees. Craftsmen created exquisite jewelry and furniture for the royal family. Priests performed daily rituals to honor the gods and ensure the stability of the cosmos. It was a world of immense privilege and power, completely separate from the lives of the ordinary farmers and laborers who made up the majority of the Egyptian population. After a period of instability, Egypt was reunified, marking the beginning of the Middle Kingdom around 2055 BCE. The pharaohs of this era were keen to establish a new sense of order and centralized control. They moved the political capital from Memphis to a new city called It-J-Tawi, south of the old capital, but the southern city of Thebes also grew in importance as a religious center. The palaces of the Middle Kingdom reflected this focus on strong, efficient administration. They were meticulously planned complexes, designed to house a growing and increasingly complex bureaucracy that managed everything from irrigation projects to foreign trade expeditions. The design of Middle Kingdom palaces became more standardized and logical. They were often built on a grid plan, with clearly defined zones for different functions. A central axis would typically lead from the main entrance to the throne room, creating a powerful sense of procession for visitors. Surrounding this central core were courtyards, administrative offices, workshops, and residential blocks for officials and servants. This structured layout was a physical representation of the highly organized state that the pharaohs of the 12th dynasty, in particular, worked so hard to build. The palace was no longer just a symbol of power, but a well-oiled machine of government. One of the key innovations of this period was a greater sense of accessibility, at least for the elite. While the pharaoh remained a divine figure, the structure of the palace allowed for more interaction between the king and his officials. Large audience halls became more prominent, providing a formal space for the king to meet with his vizier, governors, and military commanders. This was a change from the more secluded nature of the Old Kingdom rulers. The Middle Kingdom pharaohs presented themselves as shepherd kings, responsible for the well-being of their people, and their palaces were designed to facilitate this role as the ultimate administrator and judge. The remains of these palaces, though scarce, provide valuable information. At sites like Bubastis in the Nile Delta and Tel El Daba, archaeologists have found evidence of these planned royal compounds. Fragments of painted plaster show that the walls were decorated with vibrant scenes, though perhaps with less opulence than in later periods. The focus was on order, structure, and efficiency. The palace of the Middle Kingdom was a testament to a new philosophy of rule, one based on bureaucratic control and a well-managed state, setting the stage for the even greater imperial ambitions of the new kingdom that was to follow. The New Kingdom, beginning around 1550 BCE, was the age of empire. Pharaohs like Thutmose III and Ramesses II expanded Egypt's borders, bringing in unimaginable wealth, tribute, and new ideas from across the Near East. This imperial golden age demanded palaces of unprecedented size and magnificence. The main royal and religious capital was Thebes, which is modern-day Luxor, and it was here that some of the most spectacular palaces were built. These were not just administrative centers, but vast, luxurious pleasure domes designed to showcase the pharaoh's status as a mighty emperor and a living god, ruling over a vast and prosperous domain. One of the most famous examples is the palace of Amenhotep III at Malkata, on the west bank of the Nile at Thebes. Known as the dazzling Aten, this was a colossal complex of halls, courts, villas for nobles, a huge ceremonial lake, and lavish gardens. It was more of a royal city than a single building. The palace was celebrated for its vibrant decorations, with floors and ceilings painted with scenes of nature, birds flying through marshes, fish swimming in ponds, and intricate floral patterns. Malkata was a place of festival and celebration, a testament to an era of peace and incredible prosperity under one of Egypt's greatest builders. A few decades later, Amenhotep III's son, Akhenaten, brought about a dramatic religious and cultural revolution. He abandoned the traditional gods of Egypt to worship a single deity, the sun disk Aten. He moved his capital to a brand new city he built in the desert, Akhetaten, known today as Amarna. His palaces there were radically different, designed to reflect his new religion. They featured open courtyards, balconies, and large window-like openings called windows of appearance. From these windows, Akhenaten and his queen, Nefertiti, would appear before their people, showering them with gifts. The Amarna palaces were built for light and openness, in honor of the sun god they worshipped. Later in the New Kingdom, Ramesses II moved the political capital to a new city in the Nile Delta called Pi-Ramesses. This strategic location was ideal for managing his empire in the Near East. Chronicles describe Pi-Ramesses as a city of breathtaking beauty, its palaces adorned with gold, lapis lazuli and turquoise. It was a bustling cosmopolitan center filled with soldiers, diplomats and merchants from across the empire. Though little of Pi-Ramesses remains today, having been dismantled for its stone in later years, the stories of its splendor illustrate the immense power and global reach of the New Kingdom pharaohs, whose palaces were the glittering jewels in their imperial crown. Stepping inside a New Kingdom palace would have been a dazzling experience, honestly, an assault on the senses designed to awe any visitor. The architecture itself was monumental. Vast audience halls were filled with massive columns, often shaped like papyrus stalks or lotus flowers, and painted in brilliant colors. These columns supported a high roof, creating a cool and imposing space. Sunlight would filter through high, clear-story windows, illuminating intricate paintings on the walls that depicted the pharaoh victorious in battle, hunting wild animals, or making offerings to the gods. These scenes were not just decoration, they were powerful propaganda, constantly reinforcing the king's divine right to rule. The decoration was incredibly rich and symbolic. Walls were covered in painted plaster or inlaid with colorful faience tiles. Floors were often painted to look like pools of water filled with fish and lotus flowers, giving the impression of walking on a tranquil pond. Ceilings were painted dark blue and studded with golden stars to represent the night sky. Furniture was exquisitely crafted from fine woods like ebony and cedar, often inlaid with ivory, gold, and semi-precious stones. Every object, from a ceremonial chair to a small cosmetic box, was a work of art, reflecting the incredible skill of the royal craftsmen and the immense wealth at the pharaoh's disposal. Daily life for the pharaoh was a mixture of state business and elaborate ritual. The day would begin with a purification ceremony, where priests would wash and dress the king in fine linen robes, transforming him from a man into a living god. He would then proceed to the audience hall to hold court, listen to petitions, and issue decrees with his vizier. This was the formal public part of his day. The afternoons might be spent inspecting building projects, enjoying the palace gardens, or relaxing with his family in the private quarters, which were a luxurious but separate world, hidden from the public eye and filled with the queen, royal children, and concubines. Ceremonial activities were a constant feature of palace life. Grand festivals, known as Hebsed festivals, were held to celebrate and magically rejuvenate the king's reign. During these events, the palace would be filled with feasting, music, and dancing. Foreign envoys would arrive bearing tribute, exotic animals, precious metals, and luxury goods from distant lands, which would be presented to the pharaoh in the Great Hall. The palace was a perpetual stage for demonstrating power, wealth, and divine favor. It was the vibrant, beating heart of the empire, where the fate of millions was decided amidst unparalleled luxury and sacred ceremony. The end of the New Kingdom, around 1070 BCE, marked the beginning of a long period of decline for pharaonic power. Egypt became fragmented, with rival rulers in the north and south, and the country faced repeated invasions from foreign powers like the Libyans and Nubians. This political instability and economic decline had a direct impact on royal architecture. The era of building colossal palaces that were essentially entire cities came to an end. The resources and centralized authority needed for such massive projects were simply no longer available. Subsequent pharaohs had to be more modest in their ambitions, and their royal residences reflected this new, diminished reality. During this time, known as the Third Intermediate Period and the Late Period, palaces continued to be built, but on a much smaller scale. They were often constructed within the protective walls of existing temple complexes, a sign of the insecure times and the growing power of the priesthood. The focus shifted from creating expansive pleasure palaces to more functional, fortified administrative centers. Grandeur was replaced by practicality. Royal builders often reused materials from older, abandoned monuments, a practice that saved resources, but also contributed to the dismantling of the glorious structures of the past. The age of imperial splendor had well and truly passed. The primary building material for these later palaces remained mud brick. While the stone temples and tombs of the pharaohs have endured for millennia, the mud brick walls of their homes were always vulnerable to the elements. Without constant maintenance, sun drindrindai, sun trubritrimnean, sun zikain dum, crack, crumble, and are eroded by the wind and the occasional rainstorm. Over the centuries, these once mighty palaces simply dissolved back into the desert landscape. Their painted plaster peeled away, their wooden columns rotted, and their walls collapsed into low mounds of earth, making them almost invisible to the untrained eye. This is the main reason why we know so much more about Egyptian tombs than we do about their palaces. The legacy of these later, more modest palaces is one of survival and adaptation. They show how the institution of kingship tried to maintain its traditions and authority in a world that was rapidly changing. The pharaoh was no longer the undisputed master of the known world, and his home reflected that. The decline of the great palaces is a story of fading glory, of a civilization struggling to hold on to its identity in the face of internal division and external threats. The silent, eroded mounds that are left behind are a poignant reminder that even the greatest empires are, like the mud brick walls of a palace, ultimately temporary. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, bringing an end to the last native Egyptian dynasty. After his death, his general Ptolemy took control, establishing a new line of Greek-speaking rulers. The Ptolemaic dynasty embraced many Egyptian traditions to legitimize their rule, including the pharaonic titles and religious customs. However, their architectural tastes were distinctly Hellenistic. They built a new capital, Alexandria, on the Mediterranean coast, and it became the most magnificent city in the ancient world. The royal palace complex in Alexandria was a fusion of Greek and Egyptian styles, but with a clear emphasis on Greek design. The Ptolemaic palace in Alexandria was famous throughout the ancient world, though almost nothing of it survives today, as it is now underwater or buried beneath the modern city. Ancient writers described a vast complex of buildings, including the royal residence, guest houses, temples, and the legendary library and museum of Alexandria. It featured colonnaded courtyards, marble statues, and Greek-style mosaics, a world away from the mud brick structures of the traditional pharaohs. While the Ptolemies did build and restore traditional Egyptian temples elsewhere in the country, their personal living spaces reflected their Macedonian heritage and their connection to the wider Hellenistic world. When the Romans defeated the last Ptolemaic ruler, Cleopatra VII, in 30 BCE, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. The Roman governors who ruled Egypt also resided in Alexandria, taking over the Ptolemaic palace complex. For the Romans, Egypt was primarily a source of grain and wealth, and they had little interest in adopting the pharaonic style of kingship. Roman architectural influence can be seen in the cities and military forts they built throughout the country. They introduced features like arches, vaults, and the use of baked brick and concrete, which were hallmarks of Roman engineering. But these were used for public buildings and villas, not for palaces in the old Egyptian sense. The concept of the pharaoh's palace as a sacred cosmic center of the universe had faded completely. Under the Greeks and Romans, the royal residence became a secular seat of political and military power, modeled on palaces found elsewhere in their respective empires. The unique blend of administration, religion, and ceremony that had defined the pharaonic palace for 3,000 years was gone. The new rulers brought new architectural languages, and while they sometimes borrowed Egyptian motifs for decorative effect, the spirit and function of the ancient palaces were lost to time, replaced by the styles of new empires that now controlled the land of the Nile. For centuries, the locations of the great pharaonic palaces were lost. While the stone pyramids and temples stood as obvious landmarks in the desert, the mud brick palaces had crumbled into low, unassuming mounds, often mistaken for natural hills. It was not until the 19th and 20th centuries, with the rise of modern archaeology, that these forgotten royal cities began to be rediscovered. Pioneering archaeologists like Flinders Petrie began to excavate these mounds, or tells, realizing that they were not hills of sand, but the layered remains of ancient settlements. Their careful work began to peel back the layers of time, revealing the foundations of the pharaohs' homes. The process of excavating a mud brick palace is incredibly delicate. Archaeologists must be able to distinguish between collapsed walls, mud floors, and the surrounding soil, which are often very similar in color and texture. By carefully tracing the lines of the bricks, they can reconstruct the floor plan of a building, identifying audience halls, private chambers, and courtyards. These excavations at sites like Malkata, Amarna, and Pyramesses have been instrumental in helping us understand the layout and scale of these vast complexes. Without this painstaking work, our knowledge of royal life would be limited to what was written in texts and depicted in tombs. The discoveries made within these palace ruins have been extraordinary. While large treasures are rare, archaeologists have found countless artifacts of daily life. These include fragments of painted wall plaster that reveal the vibrant colors and scenes that once decorated the rooms. They have found pottery, tools, game boards, and pieces of fine furniture. At Amarna, thousands of clay tablets, known as the Amarna letters, were discovered. These were the diplomatic correspondence between the pharaoh Akhenaten and other rulers in the Near East, providing an unprecedented insight into international relations in the ancient world. Each small artifact helps to build a richer picture of life in the palace. Today, the remains of these palaces are a vital part of Egypt's cultural heritage. Sites like Malkata and Amarna are open to visitors, though what is visible is often just the low-lying foundations of the mud brick walls. It takes imagination, aided by museum reconstructions and scholarly research, to envision their original splendor. These rediscovered worlds provide a crucial counterpoint to the tombs and temples. They remind us that the pharaohs were not just distant figures in the afterlife. They were living rulers who inhabited a world of immense complexity, power, and beauty. The ongoing work of archaeologists ensures that the story of these majestic palaces, once thought lost forever, continues.